Information is available at citizensfla.com or by contacting a Citizens agent. The North Florida TPO is committed to shaping our transportation future. We're focused on planning, funding, clean fuels, and new technologies for a vibrant, connected community. Learn more at northfloridatpo.com. Baptist Health is a proud supporter of First Coast Connect. Baptist Health, committed to building a healthier community for all of us. More info at 202-4YOU or baptistjacks.com.
This is WJCT News 89.9 Jacksonville. Up next, national and local news from NPR and the WJCT News team.
Our news in Washington. I'm Corva Coleman. NATO defense officials are meeting today to talk about security guarantees for Ukraine. That's if there's a ceasefire between Russia and Ukraine. The topic came up this week when President Trump met European leaders at the White House. But today, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov criticized any effort to work on security arrangements that does not include Russia. Lavrov says Russia will look after its own interests, quote, firmly and harshly. William Taylor served as the U.S. ambassador to Ukraine under both Presidents George W. Bush and Barack Obama. He says the Russians are continuing to drag out any efforts to work toward peace.
What the Russians do and have done over and over and over is stall. And it allows their military to continue to batter, bombard the Ukrainians, which they've done.
No concrete proposals have yet emerged from the White House meeting on the war in Ukraine this week. President Trump is renewing his criticism of the Smithsonian Institution. NPR's Neda Ulabi reports.
In his post, the president called the Smithsonian Institution out of control, all caps. He said museums throughout Washington and all over the country are essentially the last remaining segment of woke. Again, the last word, all caps. The White House earlier this month announced plans to audit 8 Smithsonian museums to ensure what it called alignment with the president's directive to celebrate American exceptionalism, remove divisive narratives, and, quote, restore confidence in our shared cultural institutions. But a number of museums and historical associations have pushed back against what the American Alliance of Museums described as, quote, the growing threats of censorship in a statement. Neda Ulabi, NPR News.
Certain tax credits for people who buy their own health insurance will expire at the end of this year. These were enacted during the COVID-19 pandemic. NPR's Selena Simmons-Duffin reports on one enrollee who is bracing for a significant price hike.
It's going to be a real hit.
Ellen Allen lives near Charleston, West Virginia, and buys coverage on healthcare.gov.
My monthly premium is $479 and some change.
Next year, when there will be fewer federal tax credits,
it's going to be like $2,800 a month.
Just for her. She says it's still worth it to have the plan. She has expensive prescriptions, like eye drops. She needs to keep her vision. She says she started setting money aside now to pay her premiums next year. Luckily, she'll be turning 65 next year and will be able to enroll in Medicare.
At least it's for only 9 months or 8 months, and I'm glad I can do it. There will be a lot more West Virginians who can't.
Selena Simmons-Duffin, NPR News, Washington.
You're listening to NPR.
Good morning. You're listening to WJCT News 89.9 in Jacksonville. I'm Stephen Ponson. It is now 9:04. The Fernandina Beach City Commission is moving forward with a plan to enact paid parking in parts of the city's downtown area despite opposition from many residents. The City Commission approved a plan last night to select a vendor program that would charge for parking along a 7-block stretch of Center Street in the historic district, according to news partners at News 4 Jax. The city's Vice Mayor, Darren Askew, voiced his opposition to the plan during last night's meeting.
Every argument that you can possibly bring up here, I'm going to answer with, the people don't want this. And at some point in time, you're elected to do the will of the people.
A report from the city says paid parking would improve parking availability, turnover of spaces, and it would create a revenue stream to fund downtown improvements and maintenance. City officials will now begin negotiating a contract with the vendor, and eventually a paid parking ordinance will be brought before the commission for a vote. Trump Doral in Florida is back on the Ponte Vedra-based PGA Tour schedule for the first time in 10 years. The Miami Championship in early May will be a $20 million signature event, and it's part of an extremely crowded schedule in the spring. Players will have a 6-week stretch that starts with the Masters in Augusta, Georgia, and ends with the PGA Championship with 3 $20 million events in between. We'll have the chance for some coastal showers today here in Northeast Florida, and it'll be warm. Highs reach the low to mid-90s inland, near 90 along the coast.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Procter & Gamble, maker of ZzzQuil, with a range of products designed to relieve occasional sleeplessness to help people fall asleep. Learn more at ZzzQuil.com. This is NPR.
Support for First Coast Connect is provided in part by Baptist Health and North Florida TPO.
Good morning, I'm Ann Schindler, and this is First Coast Connect. Today, back to school began with 3 back-to-back accidents involving students hit by cars, including one that took the life of a middle school student. We talked to 2 school district safety advocates about what needs to change. Later in the program, Jacksonville's historic Pratt Funeral Home is transformed from mortuary to motel. We talked to the building's developer about his bold plans for its afterlife. But first, a series of accidents between vehicles and student pedestrians has put a familiar back-to-school hazard in stark relief. Here to discuss it, I'm joined by District 3 Duval County School Board member Cindy Pearson. Good morning, Cindy.
Good morning.
We're also joined by Heather Albritton. She's the district's Director of Health and Physical Education. Good morning, Heather.
Good morning.
Cindy, this is an issue that you have followed closely. We've talked about this on this program before. If you can, just bring us up to speed on what has happened in the Duval district since the start of the school year.
As in 8 days ago.
8 days ago.
8 days ago. We've had Thursday, there was a student who was exiting a bus at a bus stop, walking home, was hit by a truck, and that's the fatality. Middle school student. On Friday, there was a student who was exiting a parent's car at a bus stop and exited into the street, was hit, not a serious injury. And then on Monday, a high school student who was in the crosswalk, doing the right thing, hit the signal. A car did not stop and hit the student. And that was a hit and run. That driver kept going. So thankfully, not a serious injury to the student, as far as I know. But I'm angry, and I'm also discouraged at this point.
So we should say, the middle school student we know was a Springfield middle school student. His family has started a GoFundMe. His name is Josiah, and he's a darling little boy. It is a tragedy, his death. But, to your point, all of these incidents were different circumstances, each representing a different kind of hazard, but all with the same scenario in terms of a student pedestrian and a vehicle.
Yes.
And so what do we know about how this year compares to last year in terms of a problem that's become really all too familiar to parents and to teachers?
So by the fall of last year, I think November is when we passed the resolution that I talked about with you before. I think we were at 12 students hit and 2 fatalities. At that point, by the end of the year, we were around 42, 43 students hit and 3 fatalities.
So remind us of the initiative that began in part because of the death of a an Atlantic.
Last year was Fletcher, a young man at Fletcher coming home from a football game, and then a young woman from
Atlantic Coast High School.
Atlantic Coast was the third. The second
Okay.
was Ed White,
Okay,
a student crossing to catch the bus.
that's right.
So those were the 3 last year. And so the resolution called for the superintendent to develop an education program for students, for student pedestrian safety, for driver safety. It also called for him to put together, to work with our partners in the community for a community awareness campaign, and also called for him to initiate with our legislators for any legislation that would create safer conditions.
And so where do we stand with that in terms of the directive given to Dr. Bernier? I know that he sent home a letter to parents on Friday after the second of these three accidents, expressing his condolences and, calling for greater vigilance and awareness. But where does he stand in terms of fulfilling um, the directive of the school board?
I think the district has done a fantastic job on their part, mobilizing, being creative, and putting together a program. So by January, the district had put together a program called Be Safe, Be Seen, and that's what Dr. Albritton has been working on, and set up the first traffic garden at Atlantic Coast High School, which was a training ground for health and PE teachers, and then rolled the program out in their pre-planning for the second semester in January. And then PTAs and Friends of organizations have really taken this program and have created their own traffic gardens at elementary schools so their students could have hands-on practice with safe pedestrian practices. In addition, there's been a task force set up, and I know that all board members are engaged with the traffic and safety issues in their districts and have been working with their counterparts on city council to address local issues in a very local neighborhood way.
Dr. Albritton, I want to hear more about the program and kind of its various elements, how you're implementing it. But I just want to start with, this is coming to you as a fairly heavy obligation, right? This is something that is affecting lives, families forever in terms of, especially these fatal accidents. So how do you kind of carry that responsibility?
Well, I have twin 8-year-olds, so it's something that is equally important to me as a parent. So not just as a school board employee, right? As a mom and as a member of this community, this is, I wouldn't say, it is heavy when you think of why we're here, but it's important in the grand scheme of everything that we do, right? Student safety is. So pedestrian and bicycle safety is organically a part of physical education, so it's something that we are expected to do. It's in our standards and benchmarks. So it fits, and I welcome the opportunity to help make sure our community is safer.
And I believe that we were described here as kind of a traffic garden. Is that kind of the physical layout? Explain to us what that is, how students use it, how you teach through it.
Sure. So a traffic garden is essentially it's on an open flat space, so think like a basketball court. And then on top of the basketball court, you paint a simulated traffic space. So there's crosswalks, there's roundabouts, there's turning lanes, there's sidewalks, there's places that don't have sidewalks, and then you put students in a scenario to where they are walking or biking or rolling through that traffic garden on a flat landscape, and they are practicing in a non-punitive way, right? How do we navigate through, like, where would I cross here? What would I do? Oh, there's a crosswalk, 10 feet up there. I shouldn't run across the street here. Let me walk to the crosswalk.
Is this a certain age group that you're teaching this to?
So we have them, as Board Member Pearson mentioned, our very first one was at Atlantic Coast. And so we wherever the space is, that's where we want to put them, whether it's at a school or in a community, but it's for all ages. So obviously the scenarios that we would put elementary kids through would be different than what we would put our high school kids through. It just gives them a hands-on way to practice those skills in a safe space.
Do you find in your experience, I think we would instinctively believe that older students are probably better prepared for the challenges of navigating traffic, but it seems that there are also a lot more distractions that they encounter. And that may be whether they're, wearing their headphones and listening to music or staring at their phone. They might be crossing streets in a totally different headspace than an elementary school student.
Absolutely. So when we think about the students that we've seen injured, and unfortunately the students that we've lost, they're secondary students. And so when we were tasked with taking a look at our curriculum as a whole in our program, we noticed that the elementary students are where we initially start, right? That's where we want to talk to them about looking both ways, stopping, crossing on crosswalks, using the sidewalks. But as they get older, it's almost a societal expectation that everyone knows what they should do. However, now we have phones, we have earbuds, we're walking in groups with friends. And Jacksonville is not necessarily the safest place for pedestrians, and we can get to that in a little bit, but making sure that they understand those simple things that you learned in primary are equally as important now, and even more so with all the distractions. So we expanded the curriculum to include all of those things in our secondary schools. So yes, we know you know how to cross the street, but do you know how important it is for you to hear and to be able to see and look around your surroundings and take those earbuds out to where you're not looking at your phone?
Mm-hmm.
So
We've got a call from Susan in Mandarin. Good morning, Susan. Go ahead.
Good morning. That sounds like a great program because everybody needs to understand to stay on the sidewalk. In my neighborhood, people block the sidewalk with their cars, and I think that diminishes the message of stay on the sidewalk. I'd also like to say that there's a lot of traffic during rush hour, and I think it's very important that all of us taxpayers support more crosswalks and more crossing guards. And how do parents and other concerned people advocate for that? Thank you.
Thanks, Susan. If you want a crossing guard in your school, at your school, in your neighborhood, or a crosswalk, how do you proceed? What do you do?
Crossing guards are managed through JSO. And so I would say definitely reach out to your school board member to let them know about the problem if they don't already know it, and also reach out to your city council member and ask for them together to advocate for the crossing guard.
Do you urge them to call JSO as well directly?
Well, I don't want to be accused of flooding JSO with calls, but they are the decision maker in that.
Okay. We're talking about 3 recent accidents in 3 days involving students in Duval County, including 1 fatality. If you have a child in school or concerns about cars interacting with pedestrians, we want to hear from you. Give us a call at 904-549-2937. You can email firstcoastconnect@wjct.org, or you can reach out on social media. We've got a call from Stephanie in Murray Hill. Good morning, Stephanie. Go ahead.
Good morning. Thank you for having me. I'm a parent. Sorry. I live in Murray Hill. I have a 5-year-old who started kindergarten. There is no sidewalk on one of the streets that we walk her to school every morning. We're lucky that she lives just a couple blocks away. But I feel like the conversation should really be focused on enforcement of traffic laws. Born and raised in Jacksonville, I'm 42 years old. The police used to pull people over for speeding, for running sidewalks, or for running stop signs. This is an enforcement issue, and I understand that there are cell phones and earbuds, but that's not really the issue. The issue is people drive too fast. We're not enforcing traffic laws, and these vehicles are huge. You mentioned the child who was killed on his way home from a football game. That was a friend of mine's son. That truck was too big for the road, but these are the problems we have. So JSO needs to do a better job enforcing the traffic laws to keep our children safe. It should not be, I taught my daughter how to look both ways. I think every parent does. I think the onus should be more on police.
Thank you for your call. I appreciate it, Stephanie. That's something that you've talked about before, Cindy, and I know that you have been a very proactive parent when it comes to trying to walk your own kids through their paces and make sure that they understand the challenges. There are different ways to cross the street, and certainly I think most parents do try to teach their kid, look left, look right, but you really urge a whole other set of disciplines.
Well, I lived in Washington, D.C. for 11 years, and having grown up in Jacksonville and then moved to Capitol Hill in D.C., I learned to be a city person, and I could go days without moving a car. And so I walked a lot, and our children were all born there, and from the time they were very little, we were teaching them to don't trust the other person to do the right thing. You have to look out for yourself. Obviously, the left, right, left, and following the signals, but it's really more of a defensive posture of you can't trust the other person to do the right thing. And then also, I have a situation in my district, and I think the caller is exactly right. It is a shared community responsibility. And so from the school board side, from the district side, we are doing our part on the education and reinforcing, and then some other things that we may be able to talk about. From the community side, we need people to be aware, slow down, and stop for the flashing crosswalks or for school zones. from the JSO side, we do need enforcement. And I have asked for, if you travel Atlantic Boulevard and you know about Mango Place, where the new Publix and Wells Fargo Bank is, people go through that all the time. And so I've asked for JSO to start writing tickets for people who run that flashing crosswalk. I think there's also a City of Jacksonville responsibility with when they put new traffic features in to make sure that people understand what they are and how to interact with them. But I think there's been a lack of a public information campaign over the flashing crosswalks and some of the other traffic features that we have that are new to people in Jacksonville.
Those are the ones that are activated by a pedestrian and then they cross and they
Yes.
flash.
And so I stood out at Atlantic because there are a lot of problems at Landon Middle School, and this has been a 3-4 year thing with me, and watch students press the button and then have to wait for a car to go through the crosswalk, and then they had to run to make it the rest of the way. I use that crosswalk. I live in San Marco, and when I use that crosswalk, I am making eye contact with the person in the car and then waving to say, thank you for not hitting me. Thank you for stopping. And I am waving my whole way through the crosswalk. And that's what I've told students to do is make yourself big when you walk through that crosswalk. Make sure that people see you when you're walking through that crosswalk. So it's a shame that it has to be the pedestrian's responsibility. And I agree. I think we do need more enforcement.
We've got a call from Tiffany in downtown. Good morning, Tiffany. Go ahead.
Hi, good morning. Board Member Pearson is absolutely right. Back in 2019, I was able to work with Reggie Gaffney Sr. at the time and the chief traffic engineer to get what you're referring to, the rapid rectangular flashing beacons on Duval Station Road. Although we were able to reduce the speed limit, that was back in 2019. And to this day, they're still having challenges. And a lot of it is because with those collaborations, the public isn't often educated on what those flashing beacons are and how, they have to also respond to pedestrians. And so even with all the collaboration that we did on Duval Station Road, getting the speed limit reduced, putting 3 crosswalks, the rapid rectangular flashing beacons, here we are in 2025, and children are still dodging cars over at First Coast High School.
So thank you, first of all, Tiffany, for your call. I do want to ask you about, Cindy, the Duval Station Road. I mean, that is the road where one of these students was hit last week. That was without a serious injury, but that was the hit and run that you were talking about,
That was
right?
Monday, 2 days ago.
And so despite the work that Tiffany's done to get flashing lights and those beacons installed on Duval Station Road, which is a very problematic road for pedestrians on any front, it continues to be a danger. I wanted to ask you about that too, Dr. Albritton, because in terms of those flashing beacons, it does seem like a lot of motorists treat them almost like a yellow light. Like they go off and you just kind of have that last chance to speed through, as opposed to observing them as if they're a red light. And perhaps there is an education element missing.
Right. So one of the things that that moved forward from the resolution with the city is a youth traffic safety steering committee. So with North Florida TPO, the city of Jacksonville, DCPS, and other local partners like JSO, our chief of police, and Baptist Health, many people who are invested in this work, right? We have a steering committee. We met yesterday. One of the topics was the RGBs. And
what are those?
I had the rectangular beacons that blink, and I was like, what is that? What does that acronym mean? So even as a person involved in this work, I was like, what is that? But it is those spaces, and we recognize as a task force that it's not just education on our side with our students. There's a huge community effort that needs to be put forth because we've talked about this joint responsibility, but not just education for our students, but also education for our drivers. And everyone that's called in is absolutely correct. It's not just a student problem, a district problem. It is a citywide issue that we need to address head on. And a lot of that is the awareness and understanding of what our responsibility is behind the wheel. In JSO, also, we've talked about doing those pop-up traffic waves to where they are enforcing or ticketing, and not just drivers not doing what they're supposed to, but also walkers. it's all of us together, and so that's what the task force is working on, is ways that we can collaboratively try to make this a non-issue.
And what do we hear when we say, we're communicating that with the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office in terms of requesting additional enforcement? What do you generally hear back? Is it, yes, we agree, we need more enforcement, or we don't have the funds to do additional enforcement, or tell the mayor's office to budget more money and we'll prioritize enforcement? What's the general response to that?
The mayor's office is at the table as well.
Mhm.
So in that task force committee, there are all of the minds of the individuals that are working on this problem, working on this issue, trying to figure out how we can best fix it and make the most impact. So there's no pushback. Everyone agrees, like, yes, this is something we need to do. It's finding the actionable steps that make sense and that are immediately actionable, if you will.
Yeah. I mean, so does that require additional funding?
Yes, it does. Additional funding. So if we were to upgrade our flashers, board member Carney brought up I think they're called Hawk sensors, or they have them in Neptune Beach. She was describing them yesterday. If that would be an upgrade, so that would be an expense. The mom from Murray Hill who called in about the break in the sidewalk. What I've heard, it's $1 million per mile of sidewalk.
Wow.
Per mile, it's $1 million. That would be a significant expense. If we were to just, as a city, connect sidewalks that are currently unconnected, that are near schools, I think that would be a great place to start. I don't know how many millions of dollars that would be and where that money would come from. But it sounds like that would be a good use of public funds. And then on the state level, transportation, the state does not fund any district adequately for transportation. And so in Duval, our funding is about 37.5% of what we spend on transportation.
Say that again so I understand it.
Of what we spend on transportation, 37.5 of that comes from our state funding.
Okay, so the rest of it
that is
local?
earmarked for transportation. The rest we make up from somewhere else in the budget.
The great majority.
The great majority. And that's true for all 67 districts. Some may be closer to 50% funded. Jacksonville/Duval County is a large county, and we run a lot of bus routes. The state standard, they tell us if somebody is within 2 miles of a school, they don't need a school bus. So they base the budget on students who are outside of that 2-mile radius. In Duval County, we have kept elementary at 1.5 miles. So we're picking up that extra half mile on our own. Even if we were to go to the 2-mile, we still would not be funded. And so that's something that Florida School Boards Association and the Duval County School Board consistently asks for in our legislative platform, is more money for transportation. And that will be, again, part of the conversation that we have.
I mean, so it sounds like the funding that you would advocate is less about perhaps funding for JSO and enforcement and more about resources, for instance, to get kids within.
No, we need it all.
You need it all.
We need it all.
What do we know about the students who've been involved in accidents? Do we know if they were walkers, for instance? Were they kids that were not eligible for a school bus?
Last year, one was riding home from a football game.
One of the fatalities.
Yes, and the Fletcher student. The Ed White student was on her way to a bus stop.
Walking.
I think running across the road.
Okay.
And then the Atlantic Coast student was crossing a road to a bus stop.
Okay.
And then the student this year had gotten off at a bus stop and was crossing.
We've got a call from Waldenar in Fernandina Beach. Good morning, Waldenar. Go ahead.
Yes. In Japan, when kids cross the roads, they have little red flags that they hold up as they're crossing, and then they put the flag on the other side. Is there any way that we can come up with some type of idea that's cheap that can save a life somehow like that? I mean, they've been doing it for, a long time, at least 15 years. So just wanted to throw that out there, other countries on how they make it across the street.
Sure, it's a good suggestion. I mean, they're doing that in cities around Florida as well. I know that they've got those little flag crosses down in St. Augustine Beach, in, Flagler Beach. They've got them for people crossing the street. Just
I
grab
saw it
them.
in Colorado this summer. I hadn't thought about it until he said it, but I saw that in a residential neighborhood this summer in Colorado.
And so that's great if the motorists are paying attention.
Right.
But that's not always the case. When it comes to the remedies and sort of the problems as they exist, I'm curious, either of you can answer this, but some of these school zones are in traditional public schools, and they're built and constructed when the school is constructed with a mind to traffic being processed and perhaps a drop-off lane being designed. But there are a lot of schools that are non-traditional public schools, particularly charter schools, that can go really almost anywhere, and they don't have to have a specially designed traffic layout. And very often they create a lot of frustration in neighborhoods where they're put up and motorists are suddenly encountering long lines and delays, and sometimes perhaps are, then committing traffic infractions out of frustration. What do we know about how non-traditional schools might be contributing to the hazard or perceptions of, traffic delays?
I think any school that has a large number of car riders is going to have that problem. I received emails from a parent at Loretto Elementary yesterday, and also one from Bartram Park or Bartram Springs
Or-
Elementary as well. And that's very self-contained. That school was built at the front of
Sure.
the neighborhood, and she was expressing concern. So I think any school that has a large number of car riders is going to have a traffic problem.
Are
at
we
this
seeing,
point.
though, like more car riders because the bus limits in terms of, the restrictions on who's eligible? It also just seems like a lot of parents choose to drop off instead of putting their children on a school bus, much more than I think, certainly when I was growing up, there really wasn't much of a drop-off lane back then.
I think it's a function of choice also. As families have a choice to basically pick any school that they want to, not all choice options have transportation attached to them. And so that also, I think, is a function of
That's charters
more
and
car-
magnet schools and everything else, right?
It also could be a neighborhood school with a special transfer option,
Mm-hmm.
private schools as well. So
But-
some roads are Old St. Augustine, I think, is infamous
Yeah.
as a road that has a lot of schools on it and a lot of traffic.
But back to your point on traditional schools, charter schools, all of that, one of the things we did discuss in the task force committee yesterday was working with the city to put in regulations, like a regulation manual. So it doesn't matter who is building, whether it's a school, a restaurant, there are certain regs that that organization would have to follow with regard to traffic patterns, safety, transportation, things like sidewalks, crosswalks. So getting with the city and having that written in black and white in the regulations that no matter who it is, this is what you have to follow, and this is what helps make the intersections and the travel to and from your business, your school, safer for everyone. And so that's an easy thing that we're trying to work on, going ahead and getting in paper and in writing.
Well, easy, I mean, to
Correct.
perhaps get the schools, the city to do it, but I think, you could probably speak to this, Cindy, but when it comes to state carve-outs for non-traditional schools, there really is almost no length that the state has not gone to kind of create pockets of exceptions for a variety of things for charter schools or non-traditional schools or even any school that's receiving voucher money.
I think that would be difficult to enforce without help from the legislature. But I will say that I think schools are trying. I think they're aware of their issues and they're trying and they're listening to community members. DCPS, when we build new schools, we intentionally put long queuing lines. And so if you look at Southside Estates Elementary, the car line goes way onto campus and back. And I will say Cornerstone Classical, which is also in my district, is a school that's grown quite a bit. And they have re-engineered their queuing on campus and traffic multiple times, trying to make it more efficient and even put out a video for parents before school started to help people understand how to queue on campus and use that. And so I don't want to throw anybody under the bus, so to speak, on this. I really do think that people who run schools, regardless of whether they're charter or traditional public or private, are committed to safety and don't want to be a nuisance in the neighborhood. But it's just not an easy problem to solve.
Yeah, I would ask you just your thoughts. I know that you are working with students to take this Be Safe, Be Seen pledge, but what is it? What is your ask of the community and motorists at large?
I think it's just the word for us right now is shared responsibility, right? And everyone taking ownership of their behaviors. For our students, we want them to be vigilant, to be aware, and be a good leader. And for our parents, that can start with something as easy as a conversation, and just keeping everyone at the heart of what we do. It's not just your safety; it's everyone around you. So, for our kids and our families, really just taking joint ownership of what we're doing on the street and everywhere we go.
All right. Well, Cindy Pearson, Heather Albritton, thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate it. Appreciate all the work you're doing on student safety.
Thanks for your help.
Thank you.
All right. Up next, how to reserve your overnight stay at a place of eternal rest as a historic mortuary gets a makeover. Welcome back. A local developer is giving an old funeral home new life as a short-term rental. Here to tell us about reanimating the historic mortuary is Eric Adler. He's the founder and CEO of Silver Street Management. Good morning, Eric.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. And thanks for this project that you're working on because it sounds really interesting. I mean, you might realize it sounds a little bit like an elevator pitch for a horror movie, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. And that's kind of what we're going for to an extent, is trying to connect with folks who enjoy the supernatural, the macabre, those type of things. So, folks who like ghost tours in St. Augustine, Savannah, who like to, watch horror movies like that. In part, that's sort of who we're going for as our potential guests.
Is that you?
I believe it or not. So I like some horror movies, but I don't absolutely adore them. It's not my favorite genre per se.
Are you a ghost tour guy?
I do like ghost tours.
Mm-hmm.
They're super fun. I've gone on tons of them in St. Augustine, Key West, Savannah, some of my favorite cities in the Southeast. And I Jacksonville, at least to my knowledge, really doesn't have that. So I think this might be maybe the first offering in our area that can speak to folks who enjoy that part of tourism, hospitality, et cetera.
And we could talk a little bit more about sort of that element, but let's talk about the history of this place because it is a really unique building. It's on Beaver Street in downtown Jacksonville. It's 110 years old, and it is a former, undertaker. It was the Pratt Undertaking Company for a number of years, and it hasn't been closed all that long.
It hasn't. It was continually operating until the late 2010s as a mortuary, and the previous owner purchased it from the family. They attempted to redevelop it, ended up encountering some personal issues and not succeeding. I purchased the property along with several other partners in 2021 and have been working through the funding process from the city of Jacksonville, construction, et cetera. And so now we're on the cusp of launching the property as a hospitality asset.
Yeah, and this is, I think, your first adaptive reuse project. So I mean, you're almost making the face. Tell us a little bit about the process. I'm sure it has not been free of headaches, but are you preserving historic elements to it? Is it on the National Register? What's the status?
Yes and yes. So my first larger adaptive reuse project, I've done some smaller residential renovations, et cetera. But at this scale, this is the first large, I call it my first big boy development project, if you will, and have combined a number of facets. So it is listed on the National List of Historic Places via the National Park Service. It is a full adaptive reuse, changing from mortuary to basically a hospitality asset, essentially what's now called an apart hotel, if you will. So 13 apartments, 8 studio apartments, 4 one-bedrooms, and a 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom apartment, but operated effectively as a hotel.
Mm-hmm.
So I like to call it a fancy extended stay.
Yeah.
So you have, full kitchenettes, washer dryers in every unit. A guest can stay with us for a night. They can stay with us for weeks. It really doesn't matter to us as long as, they're willing to, pay up hotel level prices for kind of what effectively is an apartment.
Extended stay, not quite as extended stay as its former residence, but I get
It's very true. Well, yes and no. I will say, since it was a mortuary, they prepared folks for services, but then of course folks didn't stay on site long term. So maybe in a sense, it is kind of similar.
they eventually checked out.
They eventually checked out.
Yeah.
Yes.
and so this is, it's an interesting project. Were you able to get some help in financing? Tell us a little bit about the cost of the build out, and then also just how much it costs to acquire.
Yeah, so purchased the property for just shy of $650,000, which in hindsight seems to be pretty good. It's the cost for the construction is in total about $4 million.
Wow.
Around there. So yeah, very, very expensive. Thankfully, the project wouldn't have been economically feasible if it hasn't been for the DIA funding. So really want to thank Steve Kelly and the rest of the team there who've been instrumental in making this happen. If honestly, without DIA's assistance, this wouldn't have been possible. It's taken a long time, high cost, especially given it's only about 10,000 square feet, so not a huge property.
Mm-hmm.
So dollar square foot, I mean, it's like almost $400 a square foot, which is a lot for even an adaptive reuse project. But thanks to DIA, that's helped a lot. Also, we are going to get some credits from the National Park Service, which will help offset the costs a bit. So that has made it economically feasible, but it hasn't been easy. As you mentioned, this is my first real big boy development project. So I've done a bunch of different things at once. National Park Service, going through that whole process with them in terms of Part 1, Part 2, now Part 3 approvals for the tax credits, working with DIA, getting permits from the city, working with the state to get access to Beaver Street for utility hookups. It's been a lot of hurdles that we've mostly overcome.
Had you known, would you do it again?
Great question. I think yes, just because I've learned so much from it. So if anything, it's been an instrumental learning experience, but it hasn't been easy. There have been a lot of sleepless nights from this project. Definitely, gotten a couple wrinkles, I'm sure, and maybe the hairline and or is receded in gray hairs from this. But overall, I think it's a good project. I'm really happy with the outcome. It's absolutely stunning. I think guests are just going to adore it. It's super unique. There really is nothing like this in the First Coast area, maybe even the Southeast, and it might even be, one of the few properties like this in the entire United States.
I mean, I imagine it will get some traction in the media when it is fully underway. We should say it's on Beaver Street. It's sort of kitty corner from the Clara White Mission. It's behind the backside of the old Stanton High School. And it's going to have some interesting amenities. I think you're planning a pool and kind of a rooftop lounge or some sort of, receiving area. Tell us a little bit, though, about what is preserved in this building, because the exterior is a neat old brick building. It's got the Lawton Pratt kind of, I don't know what you call it, tiling that spells
signage.
Yep, signage, yeah.
Effectively. Yep. So it's fully amenitized as a modern hospitality asset, but we are preserving a lot of the uniqueness and originality that gives it such amazing historic character. Examples include the gates to the hearse parking area, which we've cleaned up and put on fresh coats of paint and busted the rust, and we're going to be preserving those. That'll be the entrance to the restaurant. So at night the gates will be closed again, just like they were when it used to be hearse parking, And then during the day, they'll be able to be open and, that actually be a seating area for restaurant guests. So we're going to have a restaurant on site. We have a fully built out space with a commercial hood, a grease trap, with Ansel firefighting system. I'm not a restaurateur, so I am looking for active tenants if anybody's interested in this amazing space. We're also going to we've built out the basement space, turning that into, it actually is kind of, speaking of a little creepy, but I think cool. It was the area where they prepare the bodies. So it was the original embalming area. And so that, and again, I'm not a restaurateur, but if I were one, I might say, hey, look, that could be a really cool speakeasy style bar. And so we originally planned on a rooftop, but I ran out of money. So and I thought that making the basement a usable space would be a better use than a rooftop area. So that could be a future development at some point. We have the option to do that at some point in the future. Right now, we've kind of repurposed the money to build out the basement space.
Yeah.
So that's going to be really, really neat. There's a bunch of really cool old metal doors that we repurposed and we basically affixed to the walls. And so you see these 100-year-old metal doors that, like, some of the really barn doors that are popular nowadays, but we have affixed them to the walls as decorations. We actually have the casket elevator on the second floor, which is a mechanical elevator that they use, basically a dumbwaiter for caskets.
Yeah.
And the second floor is where they would build the caskets. So the second floor in the back area was the casket factory. The front area was the living quarters. And then the first area was the receiving area, the sanctuary, the hearse parking, and then the updated embalming area in the back, which happens to be one of the apartments. I won't say which one, but it's the only one with a concrete floor. So we actually we covered over the drain area, and it's really beautiful. We did refresh the concrete. It's polished concrete. It's really pretty.
I mean, there are 13 rooms. If I had to guess,
I'll let it be a surprise, but it's our one apartment that does have the polished concrete floor, which is beautiful. It's a beautiful apartment, but that was this updated embalming area. The original one was in the basement.
We should say that for people who are watching our live stream, we've been showing some pictures of the historic structure as well as the renovated structure, which does look very spiffy. There's kind of these exposed walls that have been, painted. Everything is updated, but it looks like a very modern, Airbnb style hotel. So you said you're still kind of looking for a partner in the restaurant side. Tell us what the build-out timetable is for people to actually be able to stay there, what roughly the rates might be on a nightly basis, and then whether you need that restaurant component to actually open.
Great question. So first of all, we're hoping to be operational in a month or two. So we're really waiting on JEA connections. Everything else is almost complete. As you saw in the pictures, like the apartments are fully outfitted. We're just kind of, hanging paintings on the wall and making the beds at this point. So we're days away from being ready in the interior. The courtyard, we're almost ready to start paving that, but that should take maybe 2 or 3 weeks to get that done. So really, once we have the connections from JEA, and I know they're working diligently with the Florida Department of Transportation because Beaver Street is owned by them to connect the water, sewer, and fire lines. So if anybody out there is with JEA, we'd love your help to get this thing moving. That's really all we have left, and then we'll be ready to go. The lights are on, internet's connected, HVAC is operational. We're ready to launch. We just got to get I don't think guests want to stay with us and not be able to take a shower or shave in the morning.
I'm guessing, yeah,
or use the toilets. So obviously we can't go live until that happens, but functionally, we're basically done with everything else. So
cost?
At cost, sorry?
What will it cost, roughly?
Oh, I'm sorry. So we use dynamic pricing, so we don't have a set nightly rate, but generally rates should be probably, for the smaller studios, probably $150 to $250 a night. The one bedrooms will probably be $200 to $300 a night, and probably $250 to $350 a night for the 2-bedroom apartment. And that'll vary wildly. So, for instance, like September and January are typically the slowest seasons in Northeast Florida. You might get a significant discount there, but for Florida Georgia weekend, it would be way, way higher than that.
I'm guessing there's going to be some surge pricing on Halloween too. So Eric Adler, good luck with the project. Thanks so much for coming by. Appreciate it.
My pleasure.
All right. Up next, an immersive theater production commemorates the 65th anniversary of Axe Handle Saturday.
The Florida Theater presents The Psychology of Cults, a live event exploring how cults form, why people join, and what it takes to leave. Wednesday, October 8th at 8 p.m. Information at floridatheater.com. Museum of Science and History's new exhibition, Mosh Archives, The Story of Us and You, steps you into a treasure trove of memories, now through August 31st. Tickets and information at themosh.org.
Congress has approved a White House request to eliminate federal funding for public media. NPR and this station remain committed to informing the public, increasing your understanding of the world, and enriching everyday life. But without federal funding, we are relying on your support now more than ever. Please make your gift to this station today. Here's how, and thank you.
Visit wjct.org/sustain and thank you.
AI is everywhere, including the therapist's chair.
I am here like a healthy, normal person because of AI and my unloading, and it helped me manage my emotions.
I'm Amory Sievertson. What does it mean that we're putting our mental health in the hands of AI? That's on the next On Point.
Today at 11, here on WJCT News 89.9.
If you've noticed a jump in your electric bill, you're not alone. Energy prices have surged across the country this summer, going up at more than twice the rate of inflation. What's behind the spike? Understanding the rise in the price of power. Next time on 1A.
Today, starting at 10 on WJCT News 89.9.
Welcome back. The 65th anniversary of a key period of Jacksonville civil rights protest is commemorated in an immersive theatrical experience. Here to tell us about it is Daryl Rubin Hall. He's the executive director of Stage Aurora Theatrical Company. Welcome back, Daryl.
Thank you, and glad to be here.
Glad to have you here. So this is called the Sit-In Experience, Axe
Yes.
Handle Saturday, and it really is a different kind of experience in the theater. Tell us a little bit about how it's designed, what role the audience plays, and why you wanted it to be designed that way.
I love immersive theater. I think this might be the first project I ever held in Jacksonville on these terms as immersive theater. But it's sort of like that Van Gogh art exhibit that's been touring.
Mhm.
But the whole outline of the evening of the performance is the audience. As you said, what role do they play? They are the viewing audience, but they are also the participants in the Woolworth. The idea is to have the general audience to walk into the WJCT studios. It will be decorated as the interior of a 1960s eating establishment with a lunch counter, with food, some of it free, some of it may not be free, but come out and eat, especially popcorn, all of that, those types of foods that would have been found at the lunch counter. And then we have the reenactment of a group of Black students who come into the establishment. They approach the lunch counter, they sit, and then some of the chaos, it's reenacted with some of the language. But what I really love about the entire moment and this entire period is that afterwards, after all the chaos ends, the audience, we have a guest panel, the cast, the actors get together and talk about how to move into the future peacefully and not to repeat these types of incidents from the past.
And so, as we mentioned, this is the 65th anniversary of Axe Handle Saturday,
Yes.
and that's obviously an incredibly dark day in this city's history,
Yes.
where students who were peacefully protesting ended
Yes.
up being chased essentially by a lynch mob. I mean, beaten
Yes.
with
Yes.
axe handles and baseball bats
Yes.
in a
Yes.
orchestrated response to the protest.
Yes. And the students were trained to be silent, to not fight back, not to talk back, not to look them in their eyes. And I think that's like a lot of the power that we should practice today as well, to reduce some of the chaos that's in the world today between the different races, between social statuses, between whatever the issue might be. I think this moment, again, reflects a time that we need not repeat. And I think here in Jacksonville, we make gigantic strides on really pulling the city together through the arts. And that's what my organization, Stage Aurora, has always wanted to do. My slogan is Theater That Enlightens. So we've produced over 200 productions, all popular musicals. I think many of the listeners have attended. They may have attended my show last month out here. Dinner with Booker T was very well attended. And these are the types of things that I want to do now as I mature in my career. I'm not getting older, I'm maturing. But because I started out at Disney and now I'm doing all of this. So I think those strides is what my organization is about, Theater That Enlightens.
And you mentioned strong language. It is also a difficult subject. So who is your intended audience here?
Well, here's the thing, and I want to talk about this from this angle. And we had a rehearsal last night. It's black and white actors. And I did a lot of immersive exercises with them, a lot of acting exercises with them, because I wanted them to feel safe in this environment with the language that was being said. And one of the actors, I just don't want the other people to think if they see me on the street that this is how I am. And we covered all of that because this is theater at the end of the day. As if you were going to the movie and you were looking at Mississippi Burning or any of those films. This here is live. And we had some tears shed last night. We had some emotional moments. I did ask each artist to share something in their life that would connect them with this experience. And quite a number of stories came up that was very, very touching. And I told them, I said, this is what emotion we want to bring out for the audience to be impacted so that when they leave this experience, they can go out and share, hey, I shouldn't do this. And one person said he finally started understanding how certain people are mistreated. And that changed his whole mindset on, to change his mind.
Well, I know it is going to be a powerful production. It is Sunday, August 24th. It's here at WJCT
Sunday,
Studios at 3. And so it's free, but there is a suggested donation.
Yes. If they would like to donate $1,000, we are more than welcome to accept it. And I do want to highlight that the Ritz Voices will be here as well, the performing vocal music, 3 different numbers. So it's a lot of different activities going on because it's an experience.
Right. Well, there is a link on our site if you would like to get a reservation. Daryl Rubenhall, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Ann. Yes.
All right. And thank you for listening. That's our program. If you have comments or suggestions, you can send either to First Coast Connect at WJCT.org. And if you missed anything, you can catch our rebroadcast at 8 o'clock tonight or find our entire archive at WJCT.org or your favorite podcast platform. The executive producer of First Coast Connect is David Luckin. Our show is produced by Stacey Bennett. It's directed by Brady Coram. And our theme music is performed by Club de Belugas. Please join us tomorrow. We're going to be talking to government expert Chris Hand about state and local issues, from free Jaguars tickets to Meals on Wheels funding. I'm Ann Schindler. You've been listening to First Coast Connect.
First Connect is provided by Baptist Health and the North Florida TPO.
Baptist Health is a proud supporter of First Coast Connect. Baptist Health, committed to building a healthier community for all of us. More info at 202-4YOU or baptistjacks.com. The North Florida TPO is dedicated to transportation planning, funding, clean fuels, and new technologies for a vibrant, resilient, and connected region. More information available at northfloridatpo.com. Museum of Science and History's new exhibition, Mosh Archives, The Story of Us and You, steps you into a treasure trove of memories, now through August 31st. Tickets and information at themosh.org.
This is WJCT News 89.9 Jacksonville. Up next, national and local news from NPR and